What's cracking, guys? Your boy Daniel here from Stack Strength, and today I'm going to talk about how to optimize your sleep to see better results in your muscle and strength. Now, why is this important? Well, the CDC estimates that roughly 1/3 of all Americans are sleep restricted, and they quantify that as getting a minimum of 7 hours per night. Now, I would actually say that if you're part of an athletic population who has strength and hypertrophy goals, you're probably going to have higher recovery requirements than the average individual. So that might actually even go up for you. Now, sleep restriction is associated with several health concerns, including high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and a variety of other metabolic conditions. So not just from a performance standpoint, but also from a general health standpoint, it's incredibly important to maintain good quality sleep. Now, what do we see when we actually do see sleep restriction in athletes? We see a decrease in strength performance. We see a decrease in rate of force production. We see a decrease in total force production, decrease in acceleration, power, speed, velocity, coordination, reaction time, and a whole host of other athletic characteristics. Now, this can happen after just a single night of sleep restriction, which is incredibly profound. Strength seems to be a little bit more resilient than some of the other qualities like speed, coordination, reaction time. However, anyone who's a strength athlete who's competed for any reasonable amount of time knows that if they get one bad night of sleep, it can absolutely negatively impair the next training sessions they actually have. Now, we also see an increase in subjective evaluations of difficulty. So if you are sleep restricted, your training is actually going to feel more difficult than it really is. There's also a difference between chronic and acute sleep restriction, where chronic sleep restriction can actually prolong the return to baseline. So you have a hard training session, you dig yourself into a hole a little bit, and then that recovery time, we can actually extend that recovery time because you're sleep restricted. This is not just for performance and also from an injury standpoint as well. If you get injured, your time it takes to return to training may actually be prolonged by being sleep restricted. So it's very important to monitor your sleep effectively. Now, one really interesting study found that sleep restriction in this particular group, where they slept 5.5 hours and the non-sleep restricted cohort slept 8.5 hours per night, the sleep restricted cohort lost 55% less fat mass than their counterparts. They also lost 60% more lean mass than their non-sleep restricted counterparts. This is astronomical. This was in a caloric deficit, but it's still astronomical because these are very, very significant figures here. We also see sleep restriction dysregulated hunger signaling. So we see an increase in appetitic pathways driving the type of hedonic eating behavior that's going to drive people towards calorically dense, highly palatable foods. Now, this may indirectly throw you off your diet and impact adherence in a negative way. So again, this is really, really important. With sleep restriction, we also see a sort of a shifting in substrate utilization, where we actually begin to oxidize less fat than we normally would. Now, from a cognitive standpoint, this is still going to impact you. We see a decrease in mood, increase in fatigue, decrease in alertness, increase in mental fog, decrease in coordination, and a decrease in your ability to carry out more complex cognitive tasks, as well as a fairly significant increase in stress for some individuals. Now, during sleep, cognitive restitution occurs. So this is really important, especially from a motor learning standpoint. If you are an athlete, if you're trying to develop new motor skills, really trying to ingrain your squat, bench press, deadlift, whatever it is that you're doing, if you are learning throughout the day and then you go to sleep and you don't get good sleep, sleep is the actual time where you're actually ingraining these new learning pathways. So if you are sleep restricted, you actually prolong the skill acquisition timeline. So it takes you longer because we're not able to really embed those new motor learning skills because we're not sleeping effectively. So what can we actually do about this? First thing you can do is you can actually dial in your sleep hygiene. So the first thing that I would do is set a consistent schedule. We want to make sure that we're setting our biological clocks and actually going to bed and waking up at the right times and the same times every day. That's very important for developing a consistent routine. Next, you want to make sure you're exercising about 20 to 30 minutes every single day. This doesn't have to be a full-on training session, but you do need to be going out for a walk, maybe going for a jog, rowing, whatever it is that you're doing. Get some form of physical activity on a regular basis. Also, avoid stimulants. Avoid things like caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, and a variety of different things that can impair sleep quality as well as sleep duration. You want to make sure you have a wind-down routine that's effective. So for me, for instance, I'm definitely not going to be listening to a bunch of heavy metal and watching the news before I go to bed because that's just going to amp me up like crazy and I will not be able to get to bed. So whatever that is for you, whether it's reading a book, doing a meditation, breathing exercises, find a way to actually wind down so you're not so amped up when you actually hit the bed. Now, you also want to make sure that you make your room cool, dark, quiet, and comfortable. If you're in there and you are being disturbed by noises, if there's lights, if it's really, really hot, you're probably going to be disturbed throughout the night. So make sure that you set up an environment that's actually comfortable and productive for sleeping. Now, if you try all of these things and it's still not working, I would highly recommend that you seek out professional help from a doctor. I have sleep apnea, and that was something that actually needed to be addressed, and it's very possible that other individuals watching this also have either sleep apnea or some other sleep condition. So if you try the sleep hygiene protocol and it's still not working for you, maybe seeing a doctor is going to be a good next step. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you learned something and you got some good takeaways. Thanks so much, and I will see you on the next video.